We're going to see if it picks up. Hello, check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. There's a green. There's a little bit more green. There's only 2. I hate that you cannot choose on your microphone. You cannot change any of it as it is. But whoever the one is that pops back in, let me know if the audio is back in. I still don't hear anything. It's not telling me. It's not telling me one way or the other. But I see some green lights flashing, so I'm guessing that means yes, possibly. Need to move this over. This morning, had an issue with. I'm guessing it was an issue with the machine, but I was like at 140. My heart rate was like at 140, and then all of a sudden it tanked down to like 92 while I was on the machine. Oh, shush. Phone's acting crazy. But yeah, when I got done with working out and I came back or was headed back home, I thought about some stuff that I looked at yesterday and that I talked about yesterday. And of course, that audio is extremely distorted. This one, I hope, is not. The DSM guides that are, I'm not sure how often that they're actually made or put out, but originally everyone was going off of the DSM-4, which was the 4th iteration of, the DSM. And it gave the criteria for diagnosing people with different mental health disorders. And from what I understand, or what seems to be the universal thought or majority of thought, is that the DSM-4 was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. There was no need to go and do the DSM-5, which was made in 2013. The psychiatry community seems to be a little up in arms about the new DSM because it allows, in some cases, it allows for more people to be diagnosed with more mental disorders. So, and I'm not referring to more people are able to get into the club of being bipolar, more people getting into the club of schizophrenia. I'm referring to grief. Grief can actually now be classified as a mental illness. So a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists are baffled by how they came to that conclusion. And from what I understand, I'm not able to find much because I'm not a member of, psychology associations, and I do not have any degree in psychology, anything of that nature. From what I understand, when they did the DSM-5, there was a kind of a veil of secrecy. Everyone who participated in the DSM-5 was made to sign a non-disclosure agreement. From what I understand, in that medical community, the medical world, that means that no one can mention the processes that went on in the creation of the DSM-5. I also believe, I watched one psychologist say that they cannot verify some of the tests that are used for the additions of, like, say, adding grief as a mental illness, which to me is a little alarming. The DSM-4, I believe you could go online to like Google Scholar or any other search engine, and you could look up the tests that they did that brought in the ideas that went into the DSM in order to create the terminology and update what all has gone on. So that was one thing. That's one thing that's been on my mind since yesterday, probably 2 days ago, when I went for my C&P appointment with a psychologist in Hattiesburg. She was very focused on addiction. And yes, in the psychology world, they do have an addiction disorder. And I guess I can see where it's a full-fledged disorder. You just cannot help doing it. And when you look at the addiction disorder, I actually pulled it up. They mention different drugs. So it's not exactly it's not just hard drugs. You're talking about including cigarettes. So there's multiple things, and I often argue that we can develop addictions to just about anything. If something feeds you your brain long enough and makes you feel good, I mean, you're going to do it. Alice Cooper, he traded alcohol for golf, but now he plays golf religiously. I mean, that is where he lives. Is that good? Oh, well, it doesn't affect this. It's not hurting him. And Are we sure? I mean, doing anything too long and sticking to one thing for too long is going to cause some sort of problem. So I argue that everybody can have an addiction of some sort. But now everybody would jump on me because the next part, I was going to talk about people who don't believe in mental illness or psychology or psychiatry or any of that stuff. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because here I am saying, everyone is an addict of some sort, so to have an substance abuse disorder, yes, for substances I can see, but we're all addicts of some kind. A lot of the arguments from the people who say they don't believe in psychology, they don't believe in mental health issues, they don't believe in those things. Most of them kind of have the same outlook of, that's just how they are. It's just humanity. It's just how humans are wired, or it's a divine thing. God made them this way, or God made them perfect, but the devil is tempting. And so many different ways that people spin it. But the truth of the matter is, in the brain, there is a lot going on. There is a lot going on in every corner of our skull. And it's asinine to say that psychiatry is false, in my opinion. But anyway, back to the psychiatrist in Hattiesburg. She, I noticed, was going off of a DSM-5 and going off of, again, it was a template that was sent by the VA. So it was a preset of questions, not her actually evaluating me, but the VA giving her a script in order to evaluate me, which I believe is coming from either the new DSM-5 or it's coming from somewhere. And to do a screening or to check somebody for a progression in mental illness, or to check somebody for the beginning of a mental illness, to go by a script or a questionnaire of just these particular things and not getting to exactly what's happening with them, I think is a problem. Now, of course, on the other side of the token, here comes the doctors come marching in. We don't have enough time. There's not enough psychiatrists. We're having to see all these people. I get it. Underfunded. You don't have enough people. It's a job where there's a high suicide rate because most psychologists can't deal with a lot of the stuff that they're seeing and that they're dealing with. I understand. There's a lot of people in the military who are killing themselves because of things that they see and they just can't understand. There are prices to pay for everything that you do. And before you do something, you should really think about what is your reason for doing it. I know someone who, I don't know, they say they have a psychology degree, but they don't work in psychology at all. They say they love working in a particular field, and the field involves a very tense subject matter, and I cannot imagine them actually being able to handle it because of who they are. I know them, and I could not see them in that situation and doing it day in and day out. I knew a social worker when I lived in Nashville. It's one of the reasons why I left the city, honestly. She wanted to hang out. I was doing the music thing, and I was the tattooed music guy in the country world. And we hung out, and man, she drank like a fish. Just every place we went, she had to have alcohol just constantly. And we would go and hang out at her place, and she would finally seem to kind of come down or relax. And she would tell me stories of what she would see being a social worker that dealt with children and incidents that happen with children, as far as abuse, so far as murder. And it blew my mind that she would do this, day in and day out. And you could see it was crushing her. She hated. I know that she hated what she was doing, because her hands were tied in so many ways, and being of a certain mentality of, being strong-willed, but yet being pinned, it drives you crazy. It just does. I hope she quit. I really do. I hope she quit, and I hope she went either back to school, or I don't know. She found something better to do, because it was not for them. But a lot of the medical jobs that people are going to school for and that they think they're ready for, they're not. And you can watch as many medical dramas as you want. You can do all that crap. But there is so much to it that you aren't going to get until you get into, or as we say, you get into shit. And then that's when you're going to figure it out. But anyway, I believe that psychiatrist was following a script, and I don't think that's right for anybody, not just people going through VA doing comp and pension, or going, getting diagnosed, or, anything just for VA, but even for somebody who's just going to a regular psychiatrist, I don't believe there should be a script to it. Now, of course, you want to look for certain things. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying every little thing, if I wanted to add to a particular section, like I said, I never got to my second deployment. I've been deployed twice, and we only talked about one. And there was a few things in one, but there were a few things more in two. Like, it was consistent all the way through. So it was, to me, it seemed harmful. And I don't think that should happen. The substance use substance use disorder, a lot of times when they throw that in, it seems like it's their cover. So say I come in and I'm talking about symptoms of bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress. And they go through that. And then all of a sudden I mention that one of my coping mechanisms is to take drugs. All of a sudden the questions shift from asking me about bipolar type symptoms or post-traumatic stress to substance use disorder. It's like that's the cover. And it's easier to mark somebody as having a substance use disorder. And, well, if they just quit taking drugs, then all the other will change. And I'm speaking of what I go through here. Instead of maybe the substance use disorder is because of all the stuff that's piled on from their mental illness. When I went into treatment and I got onto lithium, and mainly just lithium, I really have not craved or wanted to take any illicit substance since then. So, but nobody cares. Now, if I were to say, oh, well, I went to AA, I went to NA, and I found my God, or I found God, and I've worked the 12 steps, and I've done this, and I've done that. I've got a sponsor, and I go hang out with them once a week. If I say that, everybody jumps for joy. It's freaking amazing, because it's the gold standard. Even though Alcoholics Anonymous and NA are not supposed to be advertised, they sure are advertised a lot. Now there are other groups like Life Ring, who is a secular type group, and I've gone to a few of those, and those are cool because you don't even talk about substance. You actually talk about your day, and you talk about what all you did. And of course, if you have an issue, then you can bring it up, and everybody will, bullshit with each other, whatever. But if I say I took a mental health medication, was put on something for mental health issues, and suddenly I no longer have the urge to use substances, nobody bats an eye. Nobody says a word. Nothing. It doesn't matter. And that is the double standard that goes on. Now, in California, it may be completely different. You got to understand, I am in BFE freaking Mississippi. I think I would almost say God was born here, like religion was born here. They took to it so quick. Oh my God. So when it comes to medical science, it comes to psychology, it comes to any of that stuff. Even when I've tried dealing with substance abuse before, the PhD doctor that I was seeing, he was part of AA or NA for using substances as well. And when I tried suggesting my higher power was music, because that's what I do, since I don't do the military anymore, music is what I do. This microphone is not just bought to do this YouTube stuff. I have a $3,000 computer inside of a rack down here with like a $1,200 DAW sitting in there with all sorts of gear around. That room back there has got a full stack bass cabinet. I mean, you just don't see everything that I have because I've chose to make it that way. See, I believe that goes with the PTSD. I pulled up a thing on there, memory loss, memory wipe. It happens to us. I still don't know the reason why we have that memory swipe that comes in. It's there. Just bam, everything changes and it's like a reset. And it's almost like you run out of tape, or you run out of space on your memory card and you got to put it in another one. That's kind of what happens. I explain in the other two videos because they happen in the other two videos. But you got to understand each video is about around 30 minutes, 20 minutes, around up in there. And within that time, it happens at least one time. Now, think about my day. Think of a 24-hour period. How many times does my brain wipe? And I forget completely what I'm doing, what I'm trying to do and get to, this, that, and the other. On top of that, confusion from the wipe, which then causes anxiety, which then causes me to freak out. And I am, why am I here? What am I looking for? I can't find this. My keys are a big thing. My keys, if I get locked in on it, I will look everywhere. Like they're back here. So I know where they are. But I can lose my mind about it. That's that's the variations that I go through just within a 24-hour period. But if I go back and I think about that psychiatrist in Hattiesburg, the moment that marijuana, opiates, and it was funny, she said opiates and heroin. Heroin is an opiate, okay? I don't know what planet this woman was coming from, but she, and I had to remind her, I said, heroin is an opiate. And she's like, oh yeah, right. And like, but if I go back to her, the addiction thing is what matters more than my symptoms, than what I actually go through. And everything goes into the fact that I used. That's the reason for everything. No, I used because of the symptoms. And that's the case for a lot of people with mental disorders. But nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to bring that up. It's you need to fix this side first, not as if something else is wrong. People are complex. We are not one-sided. We are not exactly what you see. We are not exactly what we tell you we are. We are multidimensional. And you got to look at a human that way, especially if you're going into the medical field in any capacity, whether it's psychology, whether it's being an orthopedic surgeon, whatever. You've got to look at your patients in a three-dimensional light, maybe four. I don't know. I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but I'm just saying it's crazy to keep everyone in like this cattle, like herded into this cattle ring, oh, this is just like yada, yada, yada. So blah, 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 blah. Here's the medications that'll help because it helped with this individual. That's not going to happen. whenever DSM controversies of the DSM, the abstract. Yes. Where did I put? Oh yeah, that was the substance use. Oh yeah, the post-traumatic stress. You can go online anywhere and you can look up, symptoms for post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of them that they talk about is re-experiencing the trauma, the emotional numbness or avoidance of places, people, things. It's stuff like that. Um, and most doctors will focus on just that. One of the problems with the DSM 5 that has been talked about is the fact that people can self diagnose, I guess, or self they can be diagnosed with PTSD just by saying it. Technically is the way that it goes. And a lot of people are not that excited about it because, again, you have to meet certain criteria, not a script. Again, criteria is symptoms. You have to be symptomatic in order to have it, and not just say, this happened to me, so I have PTSD. PTSD in itself is what is how the brain reacts to trauma. And when you get PTSD, it's reacted in a very jacked up way. So somebody who's grown up in the backwoods, freaking killing animals in order to eat, skinning them, dealing with the blood, the organs, and, all that stuff. They go off to war and they see somebody die. It's probably not going to be as traumatic as somebody coming from deep, nice little suburb, or coming from, a somewhat, metropolitan area where they don't have to go off and, kill in order to eat. It's not going to be the same. But also, it depends on your environment, depends on how you're taught. We are taught to be a certain way. We grow up in specific environments and we become that environment until we fly the nest. As soon as we leave, everything that we've been taught, everything that we grew up to know to be truth, all of a sudden becomes tested. Whether it's true or not, everyone gets tested when they fly the coop. That's just what happens. Sometimes people get tested to a breaking point. And that's my opinion. And that's where the coping mechanisms and things happen. Now, of course, without even having your morals and things like that tested, you have the aspect of being kidnapped, rape, spousal abuse. All those things create the environment for post-traumatic stress disorder. But I will argue this: not everyone who has been kidnapped, raped, or anything like that has PTSD. Just like not everybody who was in Iraq, who went through and got blown up or shot at or had to kill people, have PTSD. They were able to deal with it in a healthy way, and their brain did not react oddly. And all of a sudden you have that post-traumatic stress disorder. Now you've got the flashbacks and the memories of this horrific thing. It depends, to me, again, not a doctor. I'm just saying it depends on the individual. And that is my take on that. But some aspects of post-traumatic stress disorder also bleed over into other disorders. So, major depressive disorder. There's depression with PTSD, when you go into flashbacks and you go into reliving the moments, and you're going into all these different areas of a traumatic event, you will go into series of depression, and it can look like a major depressive disorder, especially since post-traumatic stress, it is hard to talk about a moment that has affected you so violently. And that's really what it is. It's a moment that has really affected you violently. Now again, everyone can debate it. Everyone can say, oh no, PTSD is blah, 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 blah. This is just my point of view, the way I kind of see the world, because I know people who were in situations that I was in, and they don't, that situation doesn't bother them. But to me, it's like it's a nightmare. So that's where I'm coming from on that. It's a personal point of view and not exactly a medical diagnoses. Like, this is the study that they've done and this is the data that they've come out with. It's nothing like that at all. There was one that I read as well that was the same as bipolar. Well, like the one about increased arousal. It's funny because in bipolar, when they mention the mania and the hypomania, the cyclothymia, it's mentioned by that. And technically, it is arousal by this definition. Increased arousal such as difficulty sleeping and concentrating, feeling jumpy, and being easily irritated and angered. That happens in mania. That happens in even depressive states. I mean, so there's an overlap, kind of like with the substance abuse dependence disorder. There can be overlaps, and they do speak of that every now and then. There was one other one that I saw. Let's see, persistence, avoidance of distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings about. Like, okay, now they have this thing. Now, I've never seen this actually. Inability to remember an important aspect of the traumatic event, not due to head injury, alcohol, or drugs. So, if you say that you've used drugs now, because I have actually never seen this, and I've just come across it, but now it makes sense. Saying that you've used a substance, the VA they compensate soldiers for going through things and having post-traumatic stress disorder. You mention using a substance, now you got a cap. Now you've got something to say, oh, well, they were abusing so and so and so and so. So maybe it's because of that and not actually because of the incident. So that would make sense as to the nice little script that the psychiatrist had, and the way the tone shifted when it went into that aspect. She kept asking over and over, what years did I start? When did substance abuse become a problem? And to me, it wasn't a problem until the VA started, well, basically in my terms, dicking me around. And eventually I started seeking relief outside of the VA. and that was around 2013. I got out in 2009. So the things that happened to me and the things that I deal with in the PTSD department are from 2002 to 2009. Substance abuse, 2013. So you really can't put that on top and say that was it. But doctors and, of course, bureaucracy, they have a way of, melding with things. So, and they mentioned reckless and destructive behavior. There's people who are bipolar who, man, they will, bounce off the walls when they go manic. I mean, when the mania itself, when a bipolar 1 goes into extreme mania, some have to be hospitalized. They have to be put in the hospital because of the manic episode that they are experiencing. So again, there's layovers and crossovers with all these different diagnoses now, and that's a problem. Also, like, if your child, from what I understand, if he has like 5 or more temper tantrums, you can take him to a psychologist and he can be diagnosed with I forget the name of it, but there is a whole new mental disorder for kids. Has nothing to do with ADD or ADHD. It is strictly kids who throw tantrums. Like, there's now a disorder for that. Not just being a kid who throws tantrums. So the new DSM-5 has a crap ton of problems, and a lot of people aren't happy. They haven't been happy. I mean, that was 2013 when it came out. It's now 2020. People are fairly upset. And my look into the DSM has shown me things as to why I've seen certain doctors act a certain way, why they've kind of blown certain things off that years ago used to matter. So it's something to think about. And everything that I talked about is something to think about if you want to. I mean, honestly, I don't care. You can do whatever you want. This is not really something for everybody. It's something that I started doing for myself. I'll be able to go back and look at videos and see, certain emotions and reactions that I have in each video. And I mean, I've got a whole nother, I don't know if I can unhook it. I have a whole nother camera like recording over here. And when this one goes off, this one is still going. So there's more going on all the way around. And it's for me. I want to see all these different sides and these things that I'm going through and research them, dig them up, the questions that I have, all those things. And I want to learn for me. Now, if somebody else learns from it, great. If you don't, great. If you hate me, great. I really don't care anymore. I am pretty much over that hump as far as life goes. So anyway, thank you for listening, watching, clicking and then going away, or clicking, going away, then coming back and then going away again. Whatever you do, that's cool. Have a good day.